there, and welcome to TV Coast to Coast, our weekly video chat where TV critics from across the country get together to talk about what's on our minds in the wide world and ever increasingly vast of television. I'm Christy Turnquist, TV critic with The Oregonian and OregonLive.com in Portland, Oregon. And in our rotation this week are Vicki Hyman of New Jersey Star-Ledger and NJ.com, and Dave Walker of New Orleans Times-Picayune and NOLA.com. Now, we are kind of staggering toward the end of the fall TV season, and it's kind of that time when we're sort of taking stock and surveying the good, the bad, the disappointing, and everything in between or beyond. And over the course of a season, we've seen shows, some of which have improved each week and others that didn't really live up to their potential. And then there are sort of war horses that prove to have a little pep left in their step. For example, I know I'm thinking about Gotham. And when it launched back in the, at the beginning of the fall season, it was really up there on my list of most promising shows. It's a prequel to the Batman, that's the British pronunciation, Batman saga. And it tells the story of Jim Gordon back when he was just a cop before he became Gotham City's police commissioner and Bruce Wayne's BFF. The pilot had lots of tantalizing elements. It had this great sense of visual style and plot lines that were a really intriguing mix of sort of classic film noir style crime drama with then the origin stories of all this rogues gallery of Batman villains. And it had a really solid cast, all of whom were kind of up to the task of delivering it with personality and a lot of panache. So then somewhere along the way, I just lost interest. To me, anyway, the show lost focus as it went along. I found myself starting to DVR episodes instead of watching them when they were on. And then I found myself deleting episodes from the DVR without watching them at all. And then I kind of had to remind myself that the show was still on. It didn't help that Fox kind of yanked it midway through the season and parked it on the shelf for a while and then brought it back, which kind of helped lessen momentum. And when I tried to get back into the swing of things, there was just this overwhelming fog of storylines and characters, all of whom were behaving in ways that I was thinking, why is he doing that? Why is she doing that? It all felt like it was too late to catch up. This is part of something that's become a peeve of mine, which is comic book derived pop culture, whether it's movies or TV, seem to feel this burden to lay on the mythology, perhaps as a way of legitimizing their stories and make them seem larger than they are, which I think is missing the point because, a good comic book derived story has plenty of action and great characters to draw from. It's part of the reason why I utterly lost interest in Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Not only did I find the show kind of boring, but I felt like I had to see every single Avengers movie and every spinoff of the Avengers movies, and then I needed to have a study guide and take careful notes so that I could tell just what all was going on and what everybody's agendas were, and I don't want to work that hard when I'm watching a comic book tale. I will say the Gotham season finale aired Monday night, and I DVR'd it. I haven't watched it yet. I probably will. I probably will watch it, but I don't feel in any big hurry, which is kind of a big shame considering that I was really excited about the show when it premiered. Now that's just my rant for the week. Vicki, I know you've got some thoughts about one of the other new shows this season, also aired on Fox. So why don't you take it away?
It did. I wanted to talk about The Last Man on Earth, which aired its finale on Sunday night, which I, of course, didn't get to watch with Game of Thrones and Mad Men and everything else going on, but I picked it up yesterday. With the state of American comedy being what it is, we've discussed it before, engineered in some lab to be as unchallenging as possible, and you need to look no further than The Odd Couple reboot, which is doing fairly well. The Last Man on Earth was this breath of fresh air. It's, absurdist, and it was fearless when it started. For those of you who haven't been tuning in, Will Forte stars as Phil Miller, the last survivor of an unspecified virus that wipes out all of humanity, or so he thinks, and he travels across the U.S. and leaves messages on billboards directing any other survivors to his hometown of Tucson, where he ends up and begins to slowly lose his mind from loneliness and boredom until the very end of the pilot episode when another woman shows up. And she's played by this purposefully cartoonish Kristen Schaal. And the second episode, which now this goes in another direction, it's just as delightful as Phil realizes he's going to have to make the best of the situation if he ever wants to have sex again. And then a January Jones shows up as another woman, and it goes in another direction. And it was slightly less delightful because January Jones is slightly less delightful than Kristen Schaal. And then a guy named Todd shows up, and Melissa falls for him, and it got, again, slightly less delightful. And then two more women show up, and suddenly the show has become a comedy about post-apocalyptic dating with this unpleasant, lying, plotting, largely useless Phil as the linchpin, which wasn't very delightful at all. He was hitting the same points over and over again, like basically, how do I sleep with a hotter woman than Kristen Schaal? And it was really not fun to watch after a while. I did find hope in the finale, where Phil is essentially exiled from the community for being an unpleasant, useless liar. And Carol, the Kristen Schaal character, decides to give another chance, even though the show has given her a former Army Ranger who knows how to hook up a hot shower and enjoys knitting as much as she does. But Phil, Will Forte's Phil, because the other guy's also named Phil Miller, they go off into the sunset. I'm not particularly invested at this point. Anyone left in Tucson except maybe Todd. And that might just be a little bit of a layover from the actor who was on Breaking Bad. I don't know. So I'm interested in thinking maybe they start over and maybe explore some other themes besides, dating somebody who is not your physical ideal. It could be fun. I'm not sure if it's coming back yet. Do you guys know if it's coming back?
Yeah, it's been renewed.
Okay, so it's coming back. I would love to see it go as Phil and Carol do in another direction. So I have a little bit of hope left, but I was really disappointed by basically the second half of the season. Now I know we're going to be. I'm tossing over to you, Dave. You're rolling your neck. We're talking about American Idol, which I stopped watching. I think after Scotty McCreery. And I switched to The Voice partly because I had to for my job, but I just got tired of American Idol. But you didn't seem to hate it.
Well, it's you hint at the phenomenon here that all three of us know so well, which is when there's a local angle on one of these performance shows, you end up having to watch it. And I always say I end up having to watch it like it's the Zapruder film. And I would not otherwise watch American Idol. I sort of lost my love for it very early on. I think it's a lot of caterwauling and sort of mainstream music that just really stopped moving me a long time ago. But what was interesting this time, and I was watching because I had a couple of local angles. One is Return from Last Year, which is Harry Connick Jr., who brings a lot of New Orleans to the show no matter what he's doing. He's just a goofball and jangly and funny and a great musician and always fun to watch and always really smart as a judge. But they had a couple of singers who went pretty deep into the show. Quentin Alexander, who's from New Orleans, and a great neo-soul singer, stylish, an outlier for this show. And then Joey Cook, who's originally from Virginia, but who spent the several months of the pre-taped, pre-production parts of the season playing on the street in New Orleans and taking accordion lessons, and also an outlier. Different shade of hair every single performance, and she played accordion and ukulele and brought a complete originality to what she was doing. It was a little mannered, and which is something that Connick pointed out, but it was so refreshing to have it not just be in sort of the soaring, modulating last chorus, key change, idol norm that I really kind of got pulled along. Even though I was watching it because I had to, I really had to sort of override my objectivity. I just enjoyed those two so much, and I enjoyed what they did for the show. They're both eliminated now, and they're back to singers, the final four, who to me appear to be mostly about hair and teeth. And there's a couple I suppose I'm rooting for, but I probably won't watch the finale. I will watch the finale because the New Orleans kids will be back, but it was sort of the reverse of what you guys experienced with those two new shows. Here was an older veteran show that's been had a ratings decline from its heyday of a pretty steep fall, but which I found really entertaining this year. And I should say, in conclusion, that I experienced the exact same thing you guys did with your two shows. Although the fall off for Last Man wasn't as severe for me, I have no idea what the finale was about. But I loved that pilot. I thought that pilot was like the funniest, smartest half hour of comedy in TV for a long time, since the glory days of Community, maybe. And Louis and some of those cable comedies. And I loved, like Christy did, I loved the Gotham pilot. We got to watch it at TCA on a big screen, and it sort of like saved the fall season for me. It was like, well, here's something I can't wait to see how it proceeds. And I had the exact same effect you did. It's on the DVR. You know, Tim Goodman, everything he TiVos that he never watches, he calls it the Tino. And that's sort of where Gotham was for me this season. And but again, so much promise for both, and I just sort of wonder where they all went. Anyway, that's it for me.
Well, you know, it's interesting because, I mean, both Gotham and Last Man on Earth have been renewed. And, you know, there are examples where, okay, I will tune in to see the season 2 premieres to see what they've done to kind of reboot or reset or whatever thing you want to say. And I'll still be hopeful. But yeah, I kept dipping in and out of Last Man on Earth. I thought it, again, had a lot of potential, but and it's Dave, you know, you mentioned having kind of the local angle on American Idol. That was the case with me too. We had you know, young Daniel Seavey, the youthful young man who was on the first part of the season. So I was watching every week to see how our local fella did. And I hadn't watched American Idol in forever and basically had given up on it. I used to watch it when Simon Cowell was on, you know. But I was pleasantly surprised at the judging, and especially because of Harry Connick Jr., who's, I think, single-handedly helped lift it out of the complete ridiculousness of what the judges had been saying in previous seasons. I mean, people would get up and sing like, you know, a cat with its tail caught in the screen door, and they'd say, "You're an artist. Your artistry is fantastic. I love what you're doing." And it's just so refreshing to hear, you know, Harry Connick Jr. acknowledge reality. I was pleasantly surprised. Now, I admit I stopped watching when our local fella was eliminated, but yeah, it was an interesting experience. Not enough to make me go back and keep watching, but I was pleasantly surprised.
Harry was a great remedy to the Nicki Minaj year as judge. I don't know if you watched that at all, but
a little bit. It was painful.
That was all about Jennifer Lopez and Nicki Minaj. Was it Jennifer Lopez?
Was it Mariah Carey?
Right. And it just ended up being about the judges, and
that was Trainwreckville.
It was awful. Although the Ellen DeGeneres season was also pretty dreadful.
That was awful.
Yeah, but now you're right, because of Harry. I think he sort of single-handedly made it watchable, even if you don't have rooting interest in a home singer. Yeah. And so it ended up being a pretty fun watch for me.
Yeah, I mean, he even made, you know, Jennifer Lopez and Keith Urban a little better.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that happy, positive note, gee, aren't we cheerful? We'll just wind it up this week. And thanks for watching, and hope you come back and see next week's edition of TV Coast to Coast. Thanks. See you guys.
Bye-bye.